Fruitless and wasteful expenditure in municipalities has cost our country 4.7 billion rand in the financial year 2021-2022.
This is according to Auditor-General Tsakani Maluleke, who today briefed Parliament on local government audit performance outcomes. She says that the growing wasteful and fruitless expenditure is a reminder of rampant corruption that is continuing to plague the country.
With growing financial pressure, we would have expected municipalities to exercise much greater prudence in how they're spending the resources that they do have, and we're not seeing that. A key indicator would be the ongoing growth in the levels of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. This year we had 4.7 billion rand of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Another key indicator would be the financial losses associated with the material irregularities that the office identified, which sits at 5.19 billion rand. And that's just on the MIs that we identified. And often we would have raised irregular expenditure as an indicator, but we know that there are instances where irregular expenditure does not translate into financial loss. But this, I think, gives you a sense that there is non-compliance and there are indications of fraud that lead to real financial losses that should be avoided, especially in an environment where there is growing financial pressure.
Allan is from Municipal IQ. Kevin, good afternoon to you. I do appreciate the time on the pulse tonight. The Auditor-General's office has said year after year that there needs to be consequence management for people who do not comply with the law, for people who waste our money. And yet again, the audit outcomes are worse. Are people just ignoring her?
Hi, Stephen. Look, I mean, the fact is there is a lack of accountability in municipalities, and we need to just understand that. I mean, who holds municipalities accountable? The municipal manager, the CFO, is held accountable by council. There's no accountability at that point, and in fact, often there's collusion in activities that you don't want to see between those two, between the administration and council. And then at provincial governments are supposed to regulate municipalities. They're supposed to catch nefarious activities, poor financial management. And then at national government, now at each of those levels, we can see a very clear failure of accountability, and the Auditor-General points this out.
There are huge provincial variations. So half of the councils that received clean audits, that did the right thing, are in one province, just the Western Cape. Two provinces, the Free State and Northwest, didn't have any councils with clean audits. Why is there so much regional or provincial variation?
Well, because the Western Cape's municipalities are better run than the municipalities of the Northwest or the Free State. Now, this is no surprise. I mean, we know this from a range of different performance indicators. And again, why is it that over very many years, municipalities in the Northwest and the Free State have been allowed to deteriorate to a truly atrocious level? The lack of service delivery in these provinces is absolutely terrible. Whereas in the Western Cape, you can see municipalities there are well run. Now, this is not a political statement, it's a statement of fact.
It appears that one of the problems that we're now seeing is that money that goes to councils is being used to pay salaries. Now, there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Some of the money is supposed to go to pay salaries. But councils are also supposed to spend money on infrastructure. Are they failing to do that as a result?
Yes, that's a really important point, and it speaks to the issue of unfunded budgets as well, Stephen, which is actually one of the biggest crisis points in municipalities. So municipalities should be spending, as you rightly say, on salaries. It's important that they develop their capacity. Lack of capacity is a serious issue. But on the other hand, the Auditor-General points out that spending on salaries is crowding out spending on everything else, which is outrageous. It means that municipalities are just spending money, and in many cases, they are spending money on salaries, and service delivery and infrastructure has absolutely collapsed. So you have a situation in a number of municipalities, failed municipalities, where the administrative buildings of these municipalities is chock-a-block, full of administrators and staff, but those staff are doing nothing and being paid a huge proportion of the municipal budget.
So that would mean, for example, the problems we see with potholes, the problems we see with water services failing, the problems we see with electricity services failing in councils, that's all infrastructure. That's going to get worse because no one's spending money on it.
Well, it's going to get worse because until provincial and national government really stop this issue of unfunded budgets, because what is happening is at the beginning of the financial cycle, basically municipalities lie about the revenue that they're going to collect, they over-exaggerate it, and they lie about the expenditure that's going to take place. And then they go ahead and just spend on something like salaries. They don't collect the revenue to cover that. The expenditure is far greater than their revenue, and they're spending on all the wrong things. And that's why you have, as you rightly say, this collapse in infrastructure, collapse in service delivery. And again, they have to be held accountable for this. And until they do, we really aren't going to see a change here.
We've been warning of the problems in councils for so long, and it seems that no one does anything. I mean, in 2018, President Cyril Ramaphosa said there was a crisis of governance in Northwest, and as you point out, no one's done anything about it. Are we likely to reach some kind of tipping point where most councils in the country look like Ditsobotla, where nothing works, where there are no roads, where there's no water, where there's no electricity? Are we at a point where the Free State, all of Northwest, some parts of KwaZulu-Natal are all going to look like Ditsobotla?
Well, it's a depressing and very important question, Stephen. I mean, in our capital city this week, we have a number of people who died from a completely, totally avoidable cholera outbreak. We should not be having cholera in our capital city. That cholera outbreak is as a result of exactly what we're talking about here. Maladministration, not looking after infrastructure, collapse of infrastructure, and corruption to boot. It seems more and more likely. And yes, I mean, a number of people are already arguing that we're seeing that we have passed the tipping point and that municipalities, by and large, are entering a period of failure, and that a number of them, a third, perhaps up to half, are already in a state of failure. And again, I mean, you know, at Municipal IQ, we've been ringing this bell for a number of years. We really do need a number of dramatic changes in municipalities, accountability being the key one. And until we do that, you know, we really are at risk of seeing an increasing number and eventually a majority of our municipalities actually becoming failed organizations where infrastructure is completely collapsed, where roads are undrivable, and where service delivery is non-existent.
Allan from Municipal IQ, really appreciate the time tonight on The Pulse.